Hey, it's Sam here. I'm going to be breaking down my first track, Inside Dreams. I'm going to show you how I made it, how I produced it. Let's get straight into it with the intro. So you can hear that's very simplistic, it brings the track in quite nicely. I was originally going to start just on the chorus, but what I thought would be a bit better was to sort of bring it in so it isn't so jarring to the listener. It's just a couple of loops from Splice. Now you're probably going to hear me say that absolutely tons throughout this video, but I do believe Splice is such a great program for producers. It's got things in every key, every mood, but especially in this sort of pop domain, I really believe Splice is the king of ideas. I'm going to start by playing that just in solo as it is. Again, it's just really simple, really sort of short, snappy, straight to the point, which leads straight into the chorus, which I'll play for you now.
Can you see what I mean? We're living inside dreams.
So again, this song hasn't got a ton to it in terms of instruments. In this section, it is just some keys, bass, vocals, guitar. So there's not a ton going on. There's a couple of obviously some samples going on and things like that. So I'm going to start by breaking down my vocal sound and how I get that to work. I'm not a vocalist predominantly, so what I do like to do is use things like vocoders and pitch shifters to try and sort of add to the power of my voice. So I'll show you how I've done that here. So this is just a vocal loop here. This is another Splice sample, not sponsored by them yet, but I do think that's really good. So that's just super simple. I've got the three vocal tracks going on here. I've got the normal, I've got a higher pitched one, which is probably an octave higher, and then an exaggerated one, which is singing a bit more intensely, but as you can see, they're really low in the mix compared to the main one. And I'm going to layer that with my vocoder sound as well to show you how this sounds all together.
Can you see what I mean? We're living inside dreams.
So you can hear they're sort of mixed, that haven't got much going on in terms of low frequencies. I'll just show you how I've mixed that vocal. It's surprisingly simple actually. Got the Infinity EQ by Slate, which I absolutely love, removing a lot of lows, quite a lot going on in the low mids here and in the mids as well, just scooping out those nasty frequencies. I do find it to be true that the more experience you get mixing, you do end up taking a lot away rather than adding, because you sort of start to understand the natural sound if it's recorded well enough. It's got a lot in there already, it's just about removing what's not needed, and then you can boost what you want to after that, which I think I probably did in this. I went into the virtual mix again by Slate. I've got the virtual channel on group. Now that'll be on the master, I'll show you that later. There's a EQ here, removing a slight bit of lows and adding those nice high frequencies, and then probably quite a heavy compressor, but it's dialed back to about 60% here. So it's not too much going on, to be honest. There's the multipressor, probably getting rid of some lows, low mids, a little bit of those sort of mid highs and accentuating that high a little bit. And then finally the de-esser. To be honest with this, I normally just find it on a preset and let it do its thing. Great plugin. These are all, I think these are actually all on the Slate of it. Apart from the multipressor, that's a Logic sort of stock plugin. But a lot of the plugins I use at the moment are the Slate ones. I do really rate them for the price you get as well. And then this is sent to, this is bus 9, 10, and 11, which is there's a large reverb, a slap, delay. There's also a mid reverb and distortion. Now for the slap, I pretty much exclusively use is the CLA Echosphere. It was free, I don't know if it still is, but that's a great plugin by itself. And I find by using these sends for your effects, what you end up having is a bit of continuity in the mix. You have it so everything sounds like it's recorded in a similar space, which I think is really important, especially since I'm not recording in a studio, I'm recording in a home environment. So if you are recording at home, I would recommend to use sends such as a reverb and send the tracks to your taste. It then means that you're having something more balanced and it sounds like it was recorded in the same room. I'm now going to go on to show you the guitar tracks. There are 3 throughout most of the song. It's a similar sort of theme. I tend to like my layers. I think 3 is a good strong number and you can have enough options without sort of filling the sonic space too much. So there's a main guitar left and right which sound like this. possibly a little bit out of tune there, to be honest, but there's a lot of reverb on them. They're very washy. Then underneath those is a heavy guitar. Now that's really quiet in the mix, but it adds a bit of growl altogether. You can't really hear it, but you can sort of feel it. Then you add in the bass, which is fully MIDI in this track. There's no audio bass. It's just, again, because of convenience. I didn't have a bass to hand. It sounds like this. It's pretty obvious it's MIDI when it's soloed, but I think if you play it in the mix, it does sort of fit in really nice.
Can you see what I mean? We're living inside dreams.
And I'll quickly go into the drums. Again, these are pretty much all sampled. So we begin with something off of Splice, and then this one here is a Logic loop, and I also think this hi-hat is a Splice loop. I'll just play those now. Really simple groove. It just keeps the track holding down, has that sort of dancey feel, nothing too complicated, which is something with this track I was really focusing on. Keep it simple, keep it energetic, and keep it fun, and that's something I think I managed to do throughout most of the track. So that covers the choruses. I'm gonna go straight into the verse.
This is the place it started. We all began the same. Stuck inside empty-hearted. What can we build from pain? Everything grows a reason. Nothing you can create.
So it's quite a similar sort of structure. There's a lot going on. The vocals are slightly changed. I'll just show you them in solo.
This is the place it started. We all began the same. Stuck inside empty-hearted. What can we build from pain? Everything grows a reason. Nothing you can create.
Now growing up, I was huge on Daft Punk. I still am. And I think that is a huge influence to me and how I want my songs to sound. Not so much as dancey as they are, or unfortunately should I say were, because they have now split. But that is sort of my homage to them, using the vocoder sound. They were a massive part of my childhood musically, and they still influence me now. And so I'm going to go on to show you what's added. There is a piano added to the verse, and there is this sort of synth, sort of wispy sound called Casper, I suppose, like the ghost in the background there, and I'll just play those for you with the vocoder and the main vocals as well for a bit of context.
This is the place it started. We all began the same. Stuck inside empty-hearted. What can we build from pain? Everything grows a reason. Nothing you can create.
So yeah, that's pretty much it in terms of vocals. There's a lot of samples going on, trying to fill the space, keep it interesting, and the drums are pretty much the same, and the guitars. So we'll now head on to the second verse, because the second chorus is pretty much the same as the first one. So I'll play that second verse.
What are you waiting for? What are you waiting for? What are you waiting for? What are you waiting for?
So this section was the hardest one of the song by far. It was quite difficult to fit in all the different vocal elements, all the guitars with the bass, all the sort of things that are rising like the synths, and to keep it sounding natural and balanced. This was definitely the part that gave me the most trouble. So I'm going to start off by playing you the main parts, which were the sort of inspiration for the section. Again, from Splice, it was, so there was this great bass sample and an accompanying sub bass sample, so I'll play them together. So for me, immediately they were full of life and energy, and I knew I had to use them. So I've coupled them up with some heaviest guitar sounds now. Again, sort of that rock sort of feel to give it a bit more edge. That's something I like to do with my music where I can. There's also a bit of a snare build up here, sort of typical club sort of sound. And the point of this section is you're building towards something that I learned from a Charlie Puth video actually, was in his song Attention. He calls it the anti-drop. So you build up, and I think he says, oh, here comes the drop, because it's the most overused word in music. But given the anti-drop where it doesn't have the same energy, and if it goes into something you wouldn't expect as a listener, I think it can give an even more impactful statement than a really big build-up drop. So I'll show you that soon, but I'm going to just play these sections with the vocals. So you can hear how that really does build a bit of momentum, and it does give you the impact and the impression that, oh, something's going to come next, which it does, of course. And that goes straight into probably my favourite section of this track, or one of at least, is where it just completely goes into the anti-drop, and it gives you that sort of halftime feel you weren't expecting. So I'll play that for you.
Can you see what I mean? We're living inside dreams. Can you see what I mean? We're living inside dreams.
So that feels like quite a sort of understated section of the track. There's a lot of cool things going on there. The 808 I'm a really big fan of. I can't actually remember where this came from, the 808. I'll play that by itself. Also, there is quite an interesting thing with the white noise. I've reversed it. So there's a white noise riser building into the section, and then when the section comes, it reverses. It's quite a good release. It's also panned to pretty much the same place on either headphone if you wear headphones. And I think that's really interesting to keep those sort of elements. It keeps a continuity, but also keeps it really interesting. It's very subtle, but without those sort of elements, I think the mixes can be lacking. And that's something that I've learned recently, because my mixes were lacking. Having little elements like this, it's sort of like Foley sound. Having that sort of thing in your mix can really elevate it, I think. So this stays on with a sort of theme of keeping it sort of interesting, keeping it so you don't know what's coming next. So again, you go from this big build up to this really sort of half-time funky groove you weren't expecting, into this fill, which is sort of like, it gives me a sort of techno feel. I'll play it by itself. It goes into a sort of house feel, something you maybe weren't expecting within the track. And again, it's all about keeping different elements going and keeping it interesting for the listener. This then leads into the bridge section, which is totally different, I think, again. And it's good because I think I've showed people the track before, and this is the point when they go, ah, because I think it's something you weren't expecting, I think. And it's a really nice sort of smooth section, really simple. It's just guitar, bass, drums and vocals. I'll just play that by itself.
I know it's hard to find. Just give it some time.
That leads into another chorus, and then to the final end section. In the end section, there's a lot of samples used. I start bringing in some sort of string sounds. There's some choir sounds in there. So I'll just play it as it is, and then I'll start to show you what's going on under the hood. So that just loops towards the end. You might see at the top here it says leads to next song, which it does. The single is comprised of 2 songs, the other one Pieces of Me. And what I think this does is it's a bit like album sequencing, which is a bit of a lost art now, where one song leads into the next. And I think that's quite an important thing to do because it makes it more of a joint experience rather than just one song blank then the other. So I think that's something I was happy to do, and they happen to fade into each other really well as well. So I'll show you some of these elements in solo. And it continues that theme of having the sort of vocoders in the background. I wanted it to fade out quite smoothly because it's quite a heavy track. It's quite sort of in your face. It's very sort of bouncy. So I think having that ending, which is quite soft and nice, makes it quite a balanced song. And that's where I'm going to end the breakdown of the track here. Thank you very much for watching. If you do have any questions, of course, let me know. And I hope to see you in another video soon.